So we're going to be working on the Winnie the Pooh Bear design. I made this one to specifically coordinate to go with some Tay-Tay's fabric that I got. And I'm going to be making the, oh, how the heck do you say this? Kavari? I don't know. The backpack from Bagstock Designs. It was part of the Bag of the Month Club. I think it's Kavari. I'm horrible at pronouncing things. But anyway, so I'll show that when it's all completed. So this Winnie the Pooh Bear design is going to go on the front flap. I am thinking right now I might have the arms kind of fall off the bottom of the bag, but I think I might just be a little lazy and just leave it on the flap itself. But I am still going to do a base vinyl or base material, so that way, in case, either way, no matter what, I'm covered if I want to sew it directly onto the flap or put it on, have it hang over. Either way, then I'll be covered. So I am hooping right now, cutaway stabilizer. When I do my bag embroidery designs, I personally like to use cutaway. You can use tearaway. It's completely a choice preference. I just like the little bit, it's a little bit stiffer. Well, it is stiffer than tearaway, but I just like, it kind of adds a little bit of oomph, I guess, to the back of the embroidery design for your bags, especially if they're independent and then being sewn on later. So other things you're going to need, of course, yellow vinyl and red vinyl for the shirt. So you won't need very much of the red. Oh, I just noticed those are two different colors. We'll see which one I pick. So you won't need very much of it, just small little pieces. Little snips are always nice to have on hand. And let me grab all the rest of my supplies. Because this one's all vinyl, I won't be using, I tend to use these for a little bit of everything, so sometimes they don't always cut very nicely. I purchased these ones from Chic Geek, and I am absolutely loving these little applique scissors. I wasn't sure at first, but I do. And so these are my normal ones. These are the ones I really only like to use for vinyl. If I can help it, I try not to do fabric or anything else with them, so that way it keeps them a little bit sharper or better for it. At the beginning, we'll use a little bit of this. It is a temporary adhesive spray. There are multiple brands of the temporary adhesive spray. This one was convenient, so I went with this one, and I've had it. Originally got it for quilting, so I ended up just moving it over to embroidery. And then some masking tape. I just cut off little pieces and then helps hold my designs, or the applique pieces. And to start, we're gonna go find what base I'm gonna use. So I'm gonna go grab my base and I'll be right back. Okay, so instead of doing a base and then having it hang off the edge, I just decided just to have it go directly onto the flap. I'll have a little bit of the flap hanging underneath them, but that's not a big deal. So this is a kind of like a faux leather from Joann's I got forever ago on clearance. It had a little bit of a stretch to it, so I added some Tay-Tay fuse on the back of it. It's similar to SF101, but it's thicker. So I wouldn't say it's double. It almost feels like it's almost 2 layers of SF101. Almost, maybe just a little bit less than 2 layers. So I've used it so far on one bag. I'll be using it on this bag, and I'm really liking it. I am definitely enjoying using it. So I'm going to go ahead and find the center of this flap. So I'm not trying to put any big creases into it or anything, but just making little notches. I don't know if you can see my finger. So just little notches on the top and bottom, just so I can kind of line it up with the center piece of my hoop. And then if you're not really sure if you really have it centered, especially on the larger hoops, I'll do this where I just take it and just mark the center. Oh, that one's a skosh tiny, the tiniest bit off, but it's all good. It's just like a reference. But it is easier to see the line on the stabilizer versus trying to line it up with the notch. So I want to make sure I'm pulling or putting enough material or enough of the flap down here that when it stitches out, I have enough room to stitch and then be able to do the flip part of it. So that looks pretty good. Let's kind of line that up-ish. And so it's mainly focused down here, so I'm not worried up there as much. But peel it back just a little bit. Add my temporary spray. And then just double check my lines. Okay, and then kind of give that a nice little press down. And then to help also hold it in place, I like to add a little bit of the masking tape, especially on the sides. Just to help keep it from moving. And then I will do kind of one in the front a little bit. So I'm just taking it on the edge of the flap, making sure to kind of like press it down, because if you pull from here, you'll leave a gap and then it'll kind of hard to tell. But if I pull it from here, there's a lot of room underneath that. So you got to make sure to keep it kind of tight, not really super tight, but just press your fingers up against the hoop and then you'll fold it over and then just attach the tape to your hoop. That way, like, it'll have room and it can move, but at least when it goes to stitch, it's not going to be yanking, because if I left it where it was pulled tight, then when it goes to stitch down, it could potentially rip or cause some issues. So I'd rather have it be a little more relaxed so when I go put it into the machine. All right, so now that this is taped down, this is secured, it is ready to go. We're gonna hop over to the machine and we're gonna start stitching out Winnie the Pooh. Okay, so we are over at my machine. This is a Brother 10 needle Entrepreneur. I absolutely love it. It is rather convenient. So go ahead and slide it in. So the first thing it's going to do, it's going to do the placement for the red for the kind of like the shoulders of his sleeves. So these are small pieces, so they're not, so you definitely don't need a lot. So I just kind of eyeball, because they're roughly about the same size. I'm going to go be brave and cut both of them without checking the other one. Yay! Okay. And because they are small, I'm just going to put some tape over it and then double check that it's still there. Okay, slide that back in. And then go ahead and do the tack down. Let's go ahead and pull the tape off. And then we're going to trim these. And then when you're trimming, just make sure you're going slow, take your time, and especially when you're readjusting, because I cut one side and now I'm going to cut let's see if I can move it a little closer, be a little easier for you to see. You don't want to angle downward because you don't want to accidentally stab your base material. You just want to kind of go in, and then I always lift the pieces, or the piece that I'm cutting away, just to help give me a little bit more room to be able to get my scissors underneath there. And then just kind of go around slowly, nice even cuts. It is easier, I've noticed, when doing applique to actually have applique scissors. When I've done this before and I use my bigger scissors that are meant for, that I have for vinyl, I notice they don't cut as nicely. I can't quite get in there as well. My cuts aren't as clean. So I've noticed the big difference in my cutting when using actual applique scissors. That's just a helpful little hint. If you want to do it, you can. You don't have to. Alright, so that's finished. We're going to go ahead and slide this back in. It is then going to do the placement for Winnie the Pooh itself for all the yellow. Pull that out, and then you want to make sure you have a large enough piece. Don't need any dog hair getting stitched down in there. Okay. Not the prettiest cut across, but it'll work. So I want to try to save, as I could just go right over the top and right in the middle. But I want to try to save some of my scraps out of this piece because it is larger. So I want to cover just enough to get the top of the ears, then the side of it done. And that way I can hopefully save the side over here. I can cut that off and then I can save it and use it for another project. And I only put a little bit of tape on there, so as it's going I might stick my hands in there just to help kind of hold it in certain areas, just to make sure that I don't get a big old bubble in it. Okay, and so now it's going to go ahead and do the tack down. And so I did grab my snips because I do see a long thread here, so I'm just going to go ahead and snip that. And then when it's all done, I can go around with my lighter and kind of singe off any extra little threads that might be hanging out, or if I have any jump stitches that I need to trim. That way it gets rid of them. And we're going to go ahead and then trim around. So then as you're coming, like especially right here, you come in close. Because this shirt is right here, so it's going to create a little bump right there. So just make sure you're not digging in super hard. And if you do meet resistance, just lift your piece up a little bit higher, see where you're going, see what's underneath. Because if you run into that and you start cutting through it, you can cut your threads, you can cut the material. So just take your time as you go. So that was my one and only on this side. And then take your time going around. You want nice smooth cuts. And even as you're cutting, just be careful not to angle your scissors too far downward, because you still don't want to accidentally be cutting through your material underneath. Especially up here, because it kind of raises up a little bit because of the hoop. Oop. Bumped my stand. And then technically the rest of the steps after this are all fill stitches and bean stitches for lines. You could technically save this trimming when it's completely finished, and then you don't have to do it inside the hoop, which is that's completely optional. I'm just doing it now. I have just a little tiny piece left. And then if you don't really like your cuts, you are always able to, once it's finished, your design's finished stitching out, when you take it out of the hoop, you can go back around and kind of peel this away from your design and kind of trim in a little bit closer if needed. I can see a couple areas where I want to definitely go back through and trim those up a little bit better. Alright, so we're going to throw this back into the machine one final time. And so now it's going to be doing the little extra yellow stitches to kind of show off where his hands are. And then kind of do a little bit of shading, show where the ears are. And then it's going to do his nose, or first I'll do his like eyebrows and his little the facial expressions around his eyes, and then his mouth, and then I'll do his little brown nose at the end. Okay, so all of our stitching is done. And now we're going to go ahead and, oop, wrong way. So I do have quite a few longer stitches, so we're going to go ahead and give those all a trim. And then trim up any jump stitches. Okay, so those are, oh, let me grab the lighter. So I'm just going to comb through here, and then you don't want to leave your lighter in one place for too long because you don't want to actually burn your vinyl. The white vinyl, even though we're working on yellow and red, white vinyl has a tendency to burn and scorch and discolor a lot easier than the other colors do that I've noticed. And here we are. We got an adorable little Winnie the Pooh. Okay,